Welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Justin Allen Rose, and for this episode, I'm bringing you another conversation I had with Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt. During the conversation, I asked about his request for a flat budget and why he thinks that would be best for the state, as well as his aspiration to make Oklahoma a top 10 state. This is For the Record.
In your State of the State address, you mentioned you wanted to cut taxes for Oklahomans and see a flat budget from the legislature. So far, you achieved that first goal. You signed that grocery tax bill, and do you see that second request becoming a reality?
Well, first off, I'm really proud of the fact that we were able to eliminate grocery tax from a state perspective for hardworking Oklahomans. That was a very regressive tax, meaning people that are really struggling to make ends meet. They basically spent a higher percentage of their money on groceries than people in the higher income bracket. So really proud to eliminate that for them because inflation, things are costing more at the grocery store. So that was very, very important for me. It's something I've been talking about since 2019. To get that across the finish line in February was super important. So I'm really, really pumped about that. Flat budgets, I do not believe in growing government. We spent a lot of money last year. There's no need to spend a lot more of the taxpayers' money this year. And so that's why I've asked for flat budgets. Will it happen? I don't get to write the budgets. Or last year they would have had a 75 3/4 of a point tax cut I would have done last year if I could have written the budget. So we'll see what happens, but with this elimination of the grocery tax, it does limit the amount of money that the legislature can spend. And so I don't think that they're going to spend as much as they have in previous years, just because they can't. And so I'm excited that we should be able to limit the growth of government because of that tax cut we did.
Why do you think it's good for Oklahoma, like right now? Why is it time for right now for Oklahoma to have that flat budget?
Yeah, well, first off, you've got to live within your means, right? And, I ultimately believe in limited government, right? Government should not be involved in every single part of our lives. We believe in free markets, and we believe in letting the free markets and private businesses handle these things. Government doesn't need to get in the business of building houses and doing this and doing that. And so that's what I mean by limited government. Obviously I tell people, let's let Washington, D.C. play politics. In other words, all that craziness going on in Washington, D.C., we're all Oklahomans. So what is our job as public servants in Oklahoma? And I break it down to 4 things. Number 1, let's make sure we have the most business-friendly environment, right? Because we want the best economy. That means that moms and dads and wages go up when we have our economy booming. So that's one thing. Secondly is infrastructure. I think the state government needs to make sure we've got great roads and bridges. Right now, we're 5th in the country in bridge conditions. We're 12th overall in infrastructure. That's so important for the economy if we've got good roads and bridges and good commute times. Then the third thing is education. Really, education probably is number 1 because we all want the best education for our kids. And so in my 5 years as governor, I've put more money in education than they did for 25 years before I got here. I gave our wonderful school teachers another big pay raise last year, which was really important to me because we want to attract the best and brightest. So we got school choice across the finish line, so that's more options for parents. And then the last thing is healthcare. And I'm always focused on how do we deliver more primary care across the state? How do we improve and get more doctors into the state and provide access to Oklahomans, more specialty doctors, more preventative care, to improve health outcomes. So those 4 things, as long as I'm the businessman governor, I'm going to be efficient with the taxpayer dollars at driving those 4 things and competing with other states to try to make Oklahoma a top 10 state.
Yeah, and with Oklahoma becoming that top 10 state, I feel like more individuals will move to Oklahoma.
That's right.
And so some of people who might, let's say, who doesn't want a flat budget or want to see maybe more money being spent by the government say, all these people are coming in, businesses are coming in, so in order to have the state be able to supply the new services for those individuals, government maybe needs to grow. What do you say to those people?
We're not opposed to government growing a little bit, but let's make it modest growth, maybe 3%, or you should have a governor based on, or a limit to government based on population growth. So that's an honest conversation. How big government should be. And my example I love to share with people is take New York and Florida, for example. The reason I picked those two states is they're widely managed differently, and they're about the same size. New York has 20 million people, Florida has 22 million, okay? So Florida's a little bit bigger. What do their budgets look like? New York's budget is $233 billion, okay? Florida's is half that at $115 billion. Same amount of people, but widely different management styles. Florida has zero income tax, okay? And New York, they tax their people 10.9%. So my point there, just to share with you, is most governments can never spend enough money. So you have to limit that growth of government. And that's why I'm always a proponent of tax cuts. When we have excess revenue, let's give some of that back to the taxpayers. It's not the government's money, it's the taxpayers' money. And let's limit the things that the government is involved here. And sometimes there's a philosophical difference with people sometimes in this building. They want to spend the taxpayers' money. And as your governor, I'm trying to limit that growth of government to protect Oklahomans and make sure that we put ourselves in the best situation to be the most business-friendly state, quite frankly.
You mentioned something when you signed the grocery tax repeal bill. You mentioned how every time it seems like Oklahoma cuts taxes, the revenue seems to go up. Why do you think that is?
Well, if you believe, so this is what people don't realize. When I say I cut the income tax for a quarter, for example, we did that a couple years ago, that money doesn't disappear. It just simply doesn't come to the government to be wasted, in my opinion, or at least a percentage of it is wasted. It's a very inefficient process, and then be invested back into whatever program that the government thinks that they should be doing. So if you cut that tax, it stays in the public's pocket. And then they're going to spend that at the restaurant and at the bicycle shop and at the grocery store. And that money will spin back through the economy on an average, what economists say, 7 times. So it will come back eventually in more revenue and more taxes to the government. So when you cut taxes, you are encouraging more spending, and actually revenue goes up, okay? There's a famous Art Laffer who has a curve that he talks about that. When you cut taxes, actually revenue goes up for the government. And so we believe that. We've seen that happen in Oklahoma, because Oklahoma used to have a 7% income tax, and now it's at 4.75%. And I would like to see it go down into the 3% number to keep up with other states around us.
One of your main aspirations seems to be making Oklahoma a top 10 state. You mentioned it during this interview, and countless others as well. What does that look like to you, Oklahoma being a top 10 state? What can people imagine that to look like?
Well, first off, I think Oklahoma is fast becoming a top 10 state. Our attitude is different than when I took over in 2018. We're top 10 in people moving to Oklahoma. We're starting to get on the map as the most business-friendly state. We've got the best most affordable energy. We're top 10 in that category. And so when I say top 10, it's very aspirational. In business, you set a big goal, and then you really work your tail off to go achieve it. And so you've never arrived at your goal. You're always pushing and trying to get better. And so I have a governor's scorecard that I track all these different metrics, and I compare ourselves to the 49 other states. And if Texas is doing something better than us, then I want to go steal that idea. Or if Florida or Tennessee or Iowa or Nebraska or California. Well, California's not doing anything better than us, but you see my point. And so that's what I mean by top 10. It's a visionary goal, and it challenges all of my secretaries running different departments. My Secretary of Agriculture. Compare yourself to other Secretary of Agricultures, and let's make sure our farmers are top 10 in the country. And let's make sure that our pork farmers or our wheat or cotton farmers, and then we can look at transportation. We've already talked about that. Let's make sure we're top 10 there. Let's make sure we're top 10 in tourism, hotels sold. Let's look and see what's attracting, what's causing people to come to other states. I was in this room yesterday. Maybe it was this morning, I can't even remember, yesterday, and took a picture with our recruiters from the Oklahoma National Guard. We're number 2 in the country, number 1 per capita, but overall numbers, number 2 in the country in recruiting. Well, I met with the recruiters back in 2019 and challenged them. Let's become top 10 in the best Oklahoma National Guard in the country. We're now number 2 in the country at doing that. So that's what I mean by top 10. It's a way that I can motivate the team to achieve more.
Are there any pieces of legislation right now alive this session that you hope to make it to your desk that you think, yes, this will help Oklahoma reach that aspiration of becoming that top 10 state?
You know, one piece of legislation that I've started pushing, and I think Representative Leader Eccles is working on, and maybe Senator Howard, is a business court system. And Delaware has traditionally been the state where most publicly traded companies would incorporate because they had business courts. Well, they've started stumbling. And then you see New York attacking businesses. What they did to President Trump's business, I don't care if it's President Trump's business or President Biden's business, what that court did that had no rhyme or reason or fact behind it and fined them $355 million, that's going to be devastating to businesses going into New York. They're going to second guess and they're going to say, hey, I'm not going to go to a state that if I get on the wrong side of a political party, that they're going to come after my business. And so I think there's an opportunity for Oklahoma to stand and raise the flag up and say we're the most business-friendly state. As a matter of fact, we've got a business court, and they're highly trained business attorneys, and here's how they interpret business law. And so that's something I would like to get done. Texas just passed that last year, so they set up some business courts, which I think would really be helpful for our businesses. So that's one of the big pieces of legislation I'd like to see done.
Last question, then I'll let you get back to your busy day. Is there anything regarding education or maybe healthcare in the state that you hope to see legislation-wise to help make the state better in those two areas? I know you signed the Parental Choice Tax Credit Program last session, but is there anything else you really want to see out of education and healthcare in the state?
Yeah, you know, healthcare, we're watching that really closely. Since 2019, I've been working on rolling out managed care to the state of Oklahoma. And that'll go live, I think, April 1st. So we're rolling that all out. I think there's 3 big providers. And really the idea is to hold the big hospitals more accountable to readmission rates and actually solving problems for Oklahomans and getting them healthier, and then providing access to health care earlier in the process, more preventative care. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that rolls out over the next couple years and improving health outcomes for Oklahomans. So that's a big piece. Education-wise, really, I'm always trying to align workforce and education with the jobs that are available in Oklahoma. It's that simple. And I'm pushing our big universities to grow to 40,000 students, but also to align and let's get more engineering students and let's get more aviation, aeronautical engineering students that can be hired at Tinker. And let's look at the companies that we have and make sure that we're aligning those degree programs to work. The other thing is on our career techs. I'm pushing our career techs to really work closer with our high schools. So when kids are juniors in high school, they can decide if they want to go become an A&P mechanic. I want them to start getting those classes underway. Not everybody is going to go to OU or OSU and be an engineer. And so we can become A&P mechanics. The other one I like to tell young people about, and so please share this, at the FAA Center here in Oklahoma City, they have 1,500 kids in an academy to become an air traffic controller. There's 1,500 slots. Well, they're going unused in some cases, and kids are coming from all over the country to be trained in Oklahoma City to become an air traffic controller. You don't have to have a college degree for that, okay? And those kids can make, starting out, around $60,000 a year, and very shortly in their career, they can make over $100,000. It's a great career option for a lot of kids. So I'm just trying to make sure kids know that there's a lot of different pathways if you don't want to go become an engineer at Oklahoma State University, for example.
Well, thank you, Governor. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
I hope you all enjoyed this episode of For the Record. Expect another episode in about 2 weeks' time. Until then, this has been For the Record.